Every empire promises freedom, but every empire appoints gatekeepers. Today, more of your life, your money, your identity, your data, even your voice, sits behind doors you don't control, and someone else holds the keys. Banks, app stores, cloud platforms, payment networks, even the little blue sign in with a button. These are not just services, they are custodians. The question isn't whether they protect you, it's what happens when the key holder decides you're the risk. Welcome to the place where money, power, and history collide, and nothing is as simple as it looks. We're told custody is safety. Don't worry, we'll keep it for you. Oh, we accept that bargain because the world is complex, passwords are fragile, and private keys can disappear in a couch cushion. But history whispers a different warning. The keeper of the key becomes the keeper of the rules, and rules change. Follow the chain of custodians long enough and you find something unsettling. We outsourced control for convenience and woke up in a world where control means permission. The line between security and supervision is thinner than it looks. To understand how we got here and what it means for your future, we need to go back to the first vaults, the first seals, the first trusted intermediaries. The rise of custodians didn't begin with the cloud. It began with civilization. Ancient temples weren't just places of worship, they were banks. In Mesopotamia and Egypt, priests held grain, silver, and tablets of debt in sanctuaries that doubled as treasuries. A seal pressed into wet clay was a promise. Breaking it wasn't just theft, it was sacrilege. Custody meant sanctity, and sanctity meant social order. As trade widened, the logistics of trust did too. Merchants crossed seas while their goods sat in warehouses guarded by guilds and city watchmen. Medieval towns appointed key wardens who literally wore responsibility around their necks. Scribes recorded transfers. Notaries authenticated the marks. Monarchs granted charters to mints and companies. The purpose was scale. When commerce stretches from Venice to Bruges, you cannot personally guard every bale of wool. You trust the man with the keys because the system makes him necessary. Then came the invention that changed everything. Paper claims on metal, and eventually paper claims on paper. In the 17th century, promises evolved into instruments. The banknote rose from receipts. Government debt rose from war. The Bank of England's founding bound the state to its creditors and created a self-reinforcing loop. The public subscribed, the government borrowed, the receipts began to circulate. Your money became a promise held by an institution, ratified by law, backed by another institution. A Russian doll of trust, every doll locked, every lock with a key, none of those keys in your pocket. Fast forward to the present, and custody is a stack of invisible hands. Custodial banks park your securities while telling you that you are the beneficial owner. Beneficial, meaning you enjoy the upside, while they manage the mechanics, settlement, lending, proxy voting, and the plumbing you never see. Central securities depositories immobilize paper, digitize ownership, and live behind fortified walls. Your shares live on their ledger. Your broker gives you a window. Payment networks approve your life in milliseconds or decline it with a code. App stores decide which software you're allowed to run on hardware you purchased. Cloud providers hold your company's soul, servers, data, models, behind dashboards and SLAs. Identity federations turn your login into a dependency on someone else's uptime, someone else's policy. We traded self-sovereignty for smoothness. Fewer passwords, fewer messes, fewer failures, until one failure cascades through every layer, because the same handful of custodians sit at the center like switchboards powering a continent. We built resilience by centralizing, then discovered that centralization is a single point of failure wearing 10 different names. When things work, we call it a miracle of modernity. When they don't, we learn how tightly the locks can click shut. Custody sells itself as safety, and sometimes it is. But safety has terms and conditions. Your account is yours until a compliance rule says otherwise. Your app is innovative until a platform policy reclassifies it. Your speech is free until a trust and safety filter flips to restricted. Your domain is owned until a registrar receives a court order or a complaint. We are living under a regime of soft law. Not legislation debated in public, but policy toggles executed in private. Custodians become governors, not elected, but inevitable. Because when risk concentrates in a few nodes, those nodes become the arena where politics happens off stage. We outsource judgment, and then we discover that judgment is power. Look closely, and you'll see 3 archetypes of custody, braided together. There is the vault, which promises continuity. Give us your assets, we'll give you resilience. The vault shines in normal times. It batches complexity, reduces transaction costs, and gives you guarantees you can plan around. One counterparty replaces 100. One API replaces 1,000 servers. The vault makes the world simple. Then there's the gate, which promises access. Build on our rails, follow our rules. Gatekeepers extract tolls, vet apps, set fees, control rankings. Sometimes that's quality control. Sometimes it's rent-seeking with a smile. Either way, they hold the turnstile. You bring the creativity, they bring the permission. Finally, there's the referee, which promises fairness. Let us hold the bond while you two decide. Courts, notaries, registrars, arbitration forms, these don't claim the asset. They adjudicate the in-between. In a world where conflict is inevitable, the referee can be a relief until the referee picks a side. Vault, gate, referee. Every modern custodian is some blend of all three. And when one institution is all three at once, checks and balances collapse into a single point of discretion. The breaking points come precisely when custodians do what they were designed to do. Banks freeze withdrawals in a crisis for stability. Stabilization for the system means paralysis for the individual. The vault closes to save itself. Platforms ban a category after an algorithm update, and yesterday's compliant product becomes today's prohibited item. Same code, same rails, different rule. Payment processors reclassify a risk profile, and your legitimate business loses oxygen. Domain registrars and certificate authorities receive a legal directive and flip a switch. Your address on the internet points to a void. Your website exists. No one can find it. And on exchanges, the mantra repeats, not your keys, not your coins. That's not crypto dogma. It's a general law of custody. If another party must sign for you, your ownership is conditional. None of this requires conspiracy. It's policy. Policies optimize for aggregate outcomes, not individual justice. The map saves the city by bulldozing your house. If we keep handing over the keys, there has to be a reason. There is. Complexity compounds. And complexity punishes amateurs. Security is hard. Most people shouldn't run their own hardware security modules, maintain cold storage, or patch their own servers at dawn because a library quietly broke. Custodians amortize expertise across millions. Coordination is harder. Networks need standards. Standards create hubs. Hubs become choke points. Liability scales with size. The bigger the stakes, the more society demands oversight. The more oversight, the more power gravitates to those who can comply. Trusted third parties become mandatory because trust is regulated. The friction paradox says, to move faster, centralize the hard parts. It works until the very centralization that gave you speed becomes the reason you cannot move at all. We were promised a way out. Self-custody, decentralization, keys in your pocket. And to be fair, cryptography delivered something genuinely new. It made possession legible to mathematics rather than middlemen. That matters. But patterns are stubborn. Many users flee the pain of managing keys straight into the arms of custodial exchanges and wallet-as-a-service providers. We reinvent the bank with better memes. On-chain governance drifts toward voter apathy. Large custodians vote blocks of tokens by default. We reinvent the proxy system with different logos. Bridges and oracles centralize risk at the margins. The decentralized application rides on a few multisigs. We reinvent the platform with prettier dashboards. Meanwhile, cloud computing turned startups into rocket ships, but added gravity in the form of egress fees, service lock-in, and API changes as de facto law. Your infrastructure as code is still someone else's infrastructure. The illusion is that the choice is binary. Decentralize or die, centralize or drown. The reality is messier. Sovereignty is a sliding scale, and most people are sliding the wrong direction without noticing. Custody concentrates decision rights, and decision rights are politics by another name. If your shares are held in street name, someone else aggregates your voice. Proxy plumbing often decides governance outcomes long before anyone raises a hand. If your reach lives on platforms, terms of service become the constitution of your public square. If your identity depends on a single email provider or phone carrier, a flagged account can unperson you at the push of a risk button. None of this is dystopia for its own sake. Systems try to manage abuse, fraud, and harm. But the net effect is the same. We built a civilization where belonging flows through custodial gates, and gates can close. To be fair, custody can also save you from disaster. A bank IDS fraud team blocks a wire that would have drained an elderly customer's savings. A platform removes a malicious app that would have rooted millions of phones. A registrar seizes a domain operating a criminal enterprise. Protection is real. So is collateral damage. The problem is not custody. The problem is custodial absolutism. One institution wearing the hat of vault, gate, and referee at once. You don't need malice to get injustice. You just need a toggle with no oversight. The healthy question is not custody or not. It's who holds the keys, under what constraints, with what recourse, and how easy is it to change locks. So what do you do inside this world? You don't need to become a digital hermit or build a bunker of seed phrases. You need to negotiate better with the custodians you inevitably use. Start by mapping your keys. Sit down and list the custodians of your life: banking, brokerage, payments, identity, cloud, domains, certificates, devices, communications. For each, answer 3 questions. Who can shut me off and under what policy? What is my recovery path, if that happens? And how fast can I migrate? The act of mapping exposes single points of failure you didn't know you had. The assistant who holds every recovery code. the single SIM that resets every account, the one registrar controlling the domain that routes payroll, email, and two-factor prompts. Make redundancy your default. 2 banks, 2 payment rails, 2 identity providers. Buy your domain from a registrar that supports easy transfer, and keep a backup DNS provider configured and tested. Use email and phone from different providers, and avoid tying all rescues to one SIM.
Mirror critical data across clouds and local cold storage. Backups you've restored are backups that exist. Everything else is poetry. Split the keys, 4 financial assets, hardware wallets with multi-signature 2 of 3 beats, 1 of 1. Add time locks when it makes sense. For infrastructure, split trust between modules. One company for hosting, a different one for your content delivery. A third for CI/CD. For Teams role-based access with physical separation, no single employee, including you, can sign the catastrophe. Clean up your policy hygiene. Read the terms and update logs of the platforms that matter. The change that nukes your business rarely hides. It whispers in a paragraph you ignored. Turn on all the boring controls, mandatory 2-factor hardware tokens, least privilege access, immutable logs. Sovereignty is a stack of dull decisions. Build exit doors you can actually open. Wherever possible, choose systems that export in open formats. If you can't leave, you don't own. Prefer protocols to platforms for core dependencies. Email beats proprietary DMS for mission-critical communication. A domain you control beats a username someone else can retract. A list you own beats an audience you rent. Don't neglect legal shields. Contracts can define notice periods, cure periods, and neutral venues for arbitration. Separate entities can box risk, so a mistake in one business line doesn't cascade into the rest of your life. The key to the company should not be the key to the founder's house. And then there's culture. Train for the bad day, run fire drills, simulate a ban, a freeze, a breach. Who does what and in what order? Where is the printout with phone numbers if the identity provider is down? Normalize sovereignty chores on the calendar. If you never make time to rotate keys, you've outsourced destiny to luck. None of this is glamorous, but neither is changing the locks after a break-in. The glamorous part is sleeping. A fair objection waits in the doorway. If everyone self-custodies everything, chaos wins. Grandma shouldn't have to memorize a seed phrase. A startup shouldn't spend half its runway building a bespoke identity stack. Society needs shared vaults, shared referees, shared gates. True, the answer is not to abolish custodians. It is to decompose them. The vault shouldn't also be the censor. The gate shouldn't also be the judge. The referee shouldn't also hold a stake in the outcome. Separate the powers. Make exits credible. Bake portability into the rules. Demand audibility of the locks. And wherever possible, keep a skeleton key that is yours alone. A better equilibrium is already emerging at the edges. Multi-party custody blends user control with professional resilience. Account abstraction makes self-custody humane social recovery without social engineering. Permissions you can program instead of trust you must beg for. Verifiable computing and attestation let you trust results instead of vendors. Interoperable identity allows you to carry your credentials across gardens so the gardener cannot uproot you by whim. Open rails pull payment and messaging through protocols first, platforms second. None of these are perfect. Each introduces new risks and new points of failure. But the direction is right. Make custodians compete on service, not lock-in. On uptime, not veto power. When switching is cheap, power behaves. There's another truth hiding here, less comfortable but more important. We did not drift into custody by accident. Complexity is not just an engineering problem, it's a social one. As societies grow richer, they grow more specialized. Specialized tasks require concentrated competence. Concentrated competence tends to nest in institutions. Institutions collect levers. Those levers become politics. If you want less discretionary power over your life, you cannot simply preach self-custody like a slogan. You must design systems that let ordinary people enjoy most of the benefits of custodianship without paying with their autonomy. That is the engineering challenge of the next decade. Not getting rid of keys, but rearranging the key rings.
This is why arguments about freedom so often miss the hinge. Freedom isn't a speech. It's a set of options that remain open when things go wrong. When a marketplace shifts its rules, when a payment network reclassifies you, when a cloud zone goes dark, when a regulator draws a new line and your business finds itself on the wrong side. The goal is not zero custody. The goal is conditional custody, reversible, portable, checkable, and never the only path you have. Hold some keys yourself. Split others with parties who can't collude. Demand locks you can independently inspect. Organize your life so that when a door slams, it's an inconvenience, not an eviction. The rise of custodians is not a conspiracy, it's an outcome. Complexity created castles. Castles require keys. And whoever holds the keys writes the rules of the courtyard. We have reached a point where everyday life depends on trust in a very small number of hands. That is not automatically evil. It is definitely fragile. When everything depends on faith in a few lock holders, the margin of error shrinks to human size. And humans, no matter how credentialed, make mistakes, follow incentives, and change policies. So here is the quiet discipline that keeps you on the right side of history's lessons. Audit your dependencies like a pilot checks a plane, calmly, routinely, without drama. Prefer plural over singular. Prefer protocols over platforms when the choice is real. Train your team to treat keys like organs, vital, redundant, and protected. Teach them that convenience is a loan that must be repaid. When you do rely on custodians, pick the ones who publish their policies, separate their powers, and invite independent verification. Reward the keepers who compete on transparency instead of terrain. And above all, retain enough control so you can leave. Exit is the only freedom that guarantees all the others. Every empire promises freedom, but every empire appoints gatekeepers. The story of modern life is not that we lost the keys, it's that we forgot to ask who was wearing them. If you remember anything, remember this. Control isn't what you say or what you intend. Control is a key ring. Build yours on purpose. Test it before you need it. And never let anyone convince you that safety must be purchased with obedience. If this gave you a new perspective, hit subscribe. History has the answers. I'll show you where to look.